Wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I know it's a hot summer night. Lots of people are at the shore, they're on vacation. Usually summertime, we get a dip in viewership, but the petitions are due July 29th. So I want to make sure that we come out here and set your expectations about what it's like to serve on a school board in advance of the petition deadline. So for those of you joining us live, thank you so much. We're delighted to have you. For those of you watching this on recording on our YouTube channel or on our website, this is very timely information, so I'm happy for you to be here. All right, can everyone give me a thumbs up if you see the screen okay? Fantastic. All right. So on our agenda today, I'm going to go briefly about who we are, talk to you briefly about Board Boost. I'll welcome our speakers and who will go over the program, and then we'll have ample time for Q&A. I also have some questions that was submitted in advance, so I want to go ahead and do that. Some housekeeping rules. I just want to let you guys know, again, this public meeting is being recorded. So realize that it is going to go out on YouTube for many other potential candidates and people interested in running for the school board. It is nonpartisan, and our work within this program is completely nonpartisan. If you have questions, please drop it in the chat as the speakers are speaking. If you have questions, drop it in, because we have 3 speakers. The subsequent speakers may cover it, so that's why we're going to ask for questions at the end. Use your raise hand or lower hand during the Q&A part. So quickly about Action Together Education Fund. We are a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit charity. I'm the founder and executive director. I also serve as a board member at the National Vote at Home Institute. And I also serve on the steering committee of Rising Stars at the Eagleton Institute as well. That's part of my work. That's all nonpartisan work. One thing that I wanted to highlight that we're doing, and we do every year, is that we send the civics handbook to registered 17-year-olds who will qualify to vote in the November election. So every year there's about 23,000 registered 17-year-olds who would qualify. We always ask for donations. We actually print and mail directly to the 17-year-olds. So with our Board Boost program, this training is only for vetted candidates, and we have a private candidates support community. We provide nonpartisan voter lists. We create our own. We do not get it from any political parties, or we don't purchase it. We have a master developer that developed this list. We've done this for 8 years, and we've reached over 1 million voters in New Jersey this way. The lists are curated and discounted vendors that you can get through our program. You also get a free headshot through our volunteer professional photographers. And we create professional campaign collateral design for candidates within our program. We help voters to find you through our boardofelducation.vote website. And a new thing this year is we are going to help you by getting the voters to find and donate directly to you in your campaign. So that's through forpubliceducation.com. So that's a new thing. But for you to be in our program, we have to be aligned on values. And I recommend, in fact, when you sign up, you have to agree that you do align. So just some quick things are that you believe in being fair and equitable. You also believe in evidence-based decision-making. I know these are not earth-shattering things. And lastly, one of the things is that we remain nonpartisan. So I want to thank our donors, our sustaining donors. It's because of them that this program is live and kicking and available for us to provide. Again, we're a nonprofit. The goal tonight is for our speakers to share their personal experiences about the realities of serving. We want to set your expectations. We also want to educate the general public on what to expect from the Board of Education. But I need to make note right up front that this webinar does not replicate or supplant training that is provided by NJSBA. They are a great organization, but the work that we provide is independent of them. It's also independent of any political organization. It does not qualify for any educational credits. We are a very independent nonprofit. We do use existing public free resources offered by the NJSBA as starting points of our conversation. But our panelists are not speaking on behalf of any organization or any school boards. These are just personal observations that they're sharing with you, and I'm so grateful for their time. Again, lastly, I want to reiterate that this webinar and our work on school boards is completely nonpartisan. So with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, but the three speakers tonight, we have our Pam Yowzy of Morris County, Rebecca Hasuna with Somerset County, and Sandra Gong with Hunterdon County. So we have a variety of geography here tonight. So our first speaker, before I hand it over, let me do the introduction for Pam. She's a two-term Board of Education member for the Madison public schools, which is where I live. So I'm thankful for her service. I've had 3 kids go through Madison Public Schools, so I'm very grateful for her service on our board. She ended her service in December of 2023. She has a vast experience on the board, serving vice president for 3 years, and she served on every committee of the board. So if you have a question about a committee, Pam's your gal, she can tell you. She was actually lead negotiator, negotiating 4 labor contracts. I know this sounds overwhelming, like how do I get to negotiating? Don't worry about it. But I do want to give some highlights of her experience. The biggest one as a taxpayer in New Jersey, in Madison, and I voted for this, was the $80 million referendum that Pam and her board passed in December. And, you know, she also participated in the search and hiring of our new superintendent. And she is a career human resources professional of, I believe, 30 years. Is that right, Pam?
That's correct. Yeah.
So with that, please welcome Pam. Pam, thank you for joining us, and let us know what would you like to let our audience know about serving on the school board?
Sure. Thanks so much, Wynn. I'm really happy to be here. And I thank everyone who's thinking about kind of raising their hand because it is such an important role. For me personally, 30 years in human resources, but my 6 years on the board really felt like the most impactful work I've ever done, primarily because you're serving the kids of your community, you're serving your community, and you're bringing your expertise and skills to the table to try and, improve what exists and make good decisions and guide people along the way. And so it's a really rewarding work. But it's really important to know what you're getting into because a lot of people don't fully appreciate what the work of the board is and where the boundaries are. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and go to the next slide. So the reality of being on the Board of Education, and I don't think I fully appreciated this when I first ran back in 2017, is that the board really only does 3 roles. And the power of the board is in the body of the board. So no one single board member can really do anything without building, consensus amongst board members. So the board makes policy. And by makes policy, what I mean is the state hands down a lot of policy to school districts, much of which is mandated. And so you're essentially taking that policy, doing a thorough reading of it, approving it, and putting it on the books. Sometimes those policies have just choices you can make, and sometimes policies are not required, and you make a decision about whether or not it's right for your district. But for the most part, they're mandated. I can give you an example of a time when our board, it was actually the board before I joined, decided to put a policy in place about practices for sports on the days that schools were closed for religious holidays. And they put that policy in place totally independent of anything else the state was doing. And several years later, we had to repeal it because it just didn't meet requirements for, for non-discrimination. So, we really don't deviate from what the state tells us to all that much. The other thing that boards do is manage one employee. That is all. There's a lot of perception that the board has oversight to all the employees of the district. We do not. They do not. You manage the superintendent, and that is all. And frankly, it's not a one-on-one relationship each board member has with the superintendent. It's the body of the board. And then lastly, and this one's a little bit of a gray area, the board's role is to ensure the district is well run. So there's a lot of things that the board does to oversee that. We, approve curriculum, and we approve appointments to positions and things like that, but we don't necessarily have direct input into those decisions. We're really reaffirming what the superintendent is recommending. So there are a lot of limitations in what the board can do. We can go to the next slide. The other thing I think that's really important and that many people don't know, most of us come to this sort of decision about running for the board because we've been volunteers in the district for years, right? I was a PTO treasurer. I did all kinds of different volunteerism roles while I was a parent. When you join the Board of Education, you kind of have to scale back on those. You can't be seen to be administering in the district, right? So if you show up in a school as a board member, it's very different than showing up as a parent. So you need to be very cautious about how often you're showing up and for what purpose. And your superintendent will guide you in that. It's one of those things that I think a lot of people struggle with, particularly if you've been very involved in schools, but there can be no perception that you have any role in running the schools. So that always has to be limited. I learned this sort of the hard way over 6 years. I mean, you make a lot of tough decisions, and you all know, you've seen the news, you watch board meetings. They can be kind of contentious. And so every now and then you feel like there's an opportunity that you're like, wow, we're gonna do this amazing thing and everyone's gonna be so happy with us. In my 6 years, there was literally not one single thing that we did where everyone was happy, including things like we were one of, I think, the last 7 districts in the state that had half-day kindergarten. We passed full-day kindergarten, and we still had people saying, well, what if I just want to send my kid for half day? We're like, okay, like, we kept schools open, through COVID. We had one school closed one day, and, it was still nothing we did was good enough, including, as Wynn said, this $80 million referendum that was just sorely needed. Obviously, even that was, a contentious thing. So you have to be prepared to have a thick skin, basically, and you get better with it over time. You're not going to please everyone, and you just have to sort of get comfortable with that if you're not already comfortable with that. My advice is, if you feel strongly about the convictions and your decision making, and you can back your decision making up with good thinking, you can feel confident that you're doing the right thing. So sort of tied back to this, one of the things that I think can be frustrating as a board member is that the community and the public do not understand the role of the board. So, I mean, Wayne can tell you, on our local Facebook page, every time it snows, the question goes out, when is the Board of Education going to call a snow day? The Board of Education doesn't call snow days, right? The superintendent does. Or you'll have parents, well-meaning friends, acquaintances will call you and ask you to intervene on certain things on their behalf. You don't do that. You can't do that. And all you can do is refer them through the chain of command. So the challenge is that despite your best efforts to educate on what the board can and can't do, people don't remember from time to time. They don't see, every time something comes up, they think the board is involved in everything. We're just not. So it can be frustrating because it feels like this continual education that just doesn't fully stick. And then lastly, so someone actually once said this to me, and it really did stick. A board of education is kind of a forced partnership. So I come from the corporate world where you build teams and you build collaboration and consensus, and there's value and there's incentive in doing that. Everybody comes to the board with a different point of view, and sometimes with agendas that are not the same, or their values don't match up with your values. And so it can be very tenuous, and it can be very stressful, and there can be a lot of discord. And that's a real challenge. And so trying to build camaraderie and consensus, there are steps along the way that, NJSBA will tell you to follow. but that doesn't mean it happens, right? Not everybody gets along. And the other challenging thing is every January, it's a new set of people or a couple new people. And you're starting all over again, that sort of, forming, norming, storming, performing. Like every year you're restarting the team building process. And so it can be a real challenge. And you can have some really kind of difficult personalities that you're working with. I think that is my last slide. So am
Yeah,
I
thank
turning
you
directly over to
so
Rebecca?
Yeah, no, let me make the introduction. Thank you so much, Pam. And I am so glad that Pam did not skirt the issues that are contentious, right? She's right up front telling you that I think the takeaway there is if you are confident in your viewpoints, you've done the research, then you can absolutely advocate for whatever it is you believe in with your fellow board members. So thank you so much, Pam. Our next speaker is Rebecca Hasuna. She ran for the first time in 2023 and won. So congratulations, Rebecca. She currently sits on the Finance, Facilities, and Transportation Committee and also the Community Relations Committee of her school board. She's also a small business owner in town, a volunteer, PTO, and a coach. Her small business is called Catering Solutions, and she's a school lunch caterer. So welcome, Rebecca. You're looking lovely tonight, and we're so happy to have you.
Thank you. As I was saying, I'm coming here right off of my FFT committee meeting, which happily was Zoom during the heat wave.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
fabulous. And to jump on what Pam was just saying, she was one of 7 districts that had half-day kindergarten. I was one of 2 districts that left in New Jersey with half-day kindergarten, which we just changed, and by 2026 we should have full day, and we still have people complaining. So for me to start, making the decision to run, first and foremost, if you have a personal agenda, just check it at the door. If you want to make changes, check it at the door, because as we were saying, you are working together as a board. You don't get to make any individual decisions about anything really. You have to work with your entire group. So if you want to affect change, make change, have grand ideas that you want to see happen, you need to find other outlets to make that happen. Whether it be state level, with lobbying in Trenton, with the county, with your own municipality, and even with the Board of Education. You will be able to say more as a member of the public than you will as a Board of Education member. So being on the board will stifle your voice a little bit. So if that's important, then you need to find other outlets, because that's not what this one is about. When I first considered running 8 years ago, I didn't feel qualified. I went to a training, actually when I met Win for the first time was in 2016. And I saw all of this happening. I learned about these committees and I learned about budgeting and this contract negotiation. I said, my God, I have no experience with this. There's no way I can be a part of this. And, I just didn't think I would be at all qualified. Fast forward 8 years later, and you don't know what you need to know to be on the board until you're on the board. Everyone's qualified to be on the board because everyone brings something from their personal lives and their business lives and their children's lives and their own experience in town. So everyone is qualified, so long as they're willing to put in the time and the work. Understanding the time commitment. I'm sorry, I have a few notes here. It is what you make it to be. You're at a minimum, you're attending 1 to 3 board meetings a month, depending on the time of year and what's happening in the district. Usually during school every other week. It says, an hour, it might be 2 hours, it might be 3 hours. If something crazy is happening, it might be more. In addition, you'll probably sit on 1, 2, 3 committees. And for me, we have them once a month. So right there, I'm talking about 3 meetings a month. I speak with my board president every week about what's happening, especially during weeks when we have a meeting. You're spending some time reading and prepping for your meeting because you want to know what you're talking about. And then if you have questions, you're reaching out to the super, your business administrator, your president to find out answers to questions so that you're prepared for your meeting. So beyond that, your time is your own. You can stop there, or you can go on and do additional training. There's always training to be done. And the more that you do, the more effective a board member you are, because you're just bringing more information, especially attending trainings and meeting other board members from other towns. You're just gathering that information, which can help you make decisions for your own town. So you've decided to run. Now what do you do? Most importantly for me was find your tribe. There are people who want to help you, who want to give you their time. They want to give you their money. They want to give you emotional support. You cannot be afraid to ask for all three of those things and accept the help when it's given. And when it's not, go out and ask for more, because you need help to run. It maybe used to be as simple as putting a few signs out and signing your petition, but now it's a little more involved. So look at your friend group, your family, anything that you've participated in with your kids, sports activities, the parents of those kids, maybe not your friends, but you know them, your neighbors. Think about anything you've done in town and anything with your past history where you can reach out to different groups of people, because you don't want to stay in your own bubble. You have to look at everyone that's out there that's going to be voting. Things that people can do for you: making phone calls, writing postcards, and especially going out in their car and putting those signs out on lawns. It all takes time. If you're from a big town, my town is very large. It was a lot of time to be doing those things. So just utilize the help that you can. Next. Last thing is getting trained. Get all the training you can. I would not have been able to do this as confidently and probably as successfully this past year without Board Boost. I attended every training that I could. If I couldn't make them, I watched them later when they were on recording. I attended the NJSBA trainings that they had available. I scoured their website, and I would just Google how to run for Board of Education, because there's a lot of information out there from other towns that they give you like a little guide, and you might be able to glean a little bit of information that will help you as you go along. Right. And dress for the position you want, not the one you have. If you want to run for the Board of Education, act like you are already on the Board of Education. You need to watch what you say. You need to go to the meetings. You need to do the reading on the agenda and see what's going on at the meeting. If you have questions about the agenda, stand up during public comment and ask your question. Make your comments known, get your voice then, but you want to be a part of it, make yourself a part of it. Even if you don't win, that is a positive for you and your town, because you're putting the time in. And the more people in town that are supporting our kids and showing up at those meetings and asking the questions, the better it is. So if you win, be prepared. If you've done all that training, you're ready to go. You're going to walk into your first meeting and you're going to already know what's happening. There's not going to be any big surprises. You want to meet with everybody one-on-one, so you kind of feel out the personalities and see who you're working with. You want to stay away from being a part of a clique, gossiping. But as I said, you also want to keep your ear open and know what's going on. You want to find your voice. And again, if you've done that training, you will find your voice. You have a place in that room and you'll make yourself known. You'll get a board mentor who will help you and be available for any questions. And again, as Pam mentioned, that chain of command, it is the most important document, because you need to know when your neighbor calls and said, I have a problem with, this teacher at this school, they shouldn't be coming to you, but they will. So you want to be able to direct them as professionally as possible to where they need to go. They need to find their principal. They need to find a supervisor, maybe the superintendent, but it's not you. So just be prepared for those questions and be prepared on how to answer them.
Great. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that. We have a question in the chat. If you guys, as you're listening, you have questions, please drop them in the chat and we will be sure to get back to you. I'm pleased to introduce our last panelist, Sandra. So Sandra is born and raised in New York City with a degree in, it's impressive, all these schools. And as a parent with my third kid going to college, I just see cha-ching, 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 all the money. Cornell, NYU, Columbia, right? right, parents? So Sandra has over 25 years in corporate, including hospital administrator and HR. She was recently elected to the Board of Education at the Hunterdon Central Regional High School, and she and her husband have been NJ residents for almost 30 years. In her spare time, Sandra also volunteers at the local area food pantry. She sits on the board of the Friends of Hunterdon County Library. So with that, I'd like to welcome Sandra.
Thank you, Wynn, for that introduction. And I'm just getting over a cold, so hopefully it won't be too much coughing. I should repeat just once more that what I say this evening is really my opinion and does not represent the views of the Hunterdon Central Regional High School Board of Education, of which I am a member. I'm very careful about that. Campaigning can be hard and we can do hard things. Um, I was naive. I thought I could just throw a couple of yard signs in my front yard and that would be it. But that's not it. You need to be out there and raising money. And as my colleagues say, you need to ask your friends for emotional, moral support, but also financial support. You have to kind of leave your comfort zone to do that. And I am an introvert, and I left my comfort zone and found my team and was able to win by 31 votes in Hunterdon County, well, actually Raritan Township. Next slide. Okay, research. You need to do your homework before you decide to run. And I am grateful that there are so many people on this Zoom call. The attending board meetings is really, really important. You get to know the board members who are currently on the board. You get to know the superintendent, how active that superintendent is, how present that superintendent is, and also the background of that superintendent, because at every board meeting, the superintendent will do a report out. The existing board members, what you really want to find out is their views. And sometimes that's hard because at a board meeting, what I think a lot of people don't understand is that there are a lot of conversations, committee meetings that occur before the public board meeting. And so at the public board meeting, as it's been said, sometimes we look like bobblehead dolls because we are voting and it looks like we're all voting the same way, but really there have been a lot of discussions during the month if you do your work. The opposition. So if you're going to vote, you're going to have someone who's probably going to oppose you. You're really lucky if there is no opposition. How do you find out about your opposition? Well, they will be campaigning, and so they will make public statements just as you will. You will have a social media page. And it's important if you are going to decide to run that you look at what information is online about you. So do it now. And if there are things that you don't want out there, you need to clean it up. And I'm very serious about that. I actually had a minimal social media presence, which was actually quite good. But I saw one of the chat questions that it's very difficult to find out about candidates who are running for Board of Education. So you really do need to do your research and do your digging. The other comments about research is that, go through your schools or school district's website. There's a ton of information there. And I probably only went through a little bit, but there is so much information on that website. There are minutes to meetings, there are previous agendas. So what you really need to do is scour that particular website. But you should also talk to parents. You should talk to people in the community. You should talk to parents of kids who are in the school of which you want to become a board member, or talk to parents whose kids just graduated from the particular school that you might become a board member for. When I attended board meetings, some of them are actually quite boring. Bring a book, But you know what? Some of the meetings that I attended were actually quite thrilling and exciting. So you just never know what's going to be on the agenda for your school board. Next slide. Why are you running? Why did I run? I think Pam actually showed a picture of different properties in one of her slides. So I'm a taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a parent. Um, when I started to run for school board, I looked really closely at my tax bill, and I looked at it and I was shocked. 75% of my taxes go to support our schools in our district. 75%. And that is why voting for a school board is actually quite important. So why do people move to a particular town? Well, we moved there because of the school district, because of the reputation and the quality of that particular school district. And so in running for a school board, I hope that one of your motivations is that you want to maintain the reputation and quality of the schools in your school district. And that will only serve to enhance your property values. A quality school district is really important to have a thriving community. Again, why do people move to a particular area? It really is for the schools, at least in New Jersey. I was also asked by a member of the board who was stepping down to run for his position. And I had listened to him over, gosh, over a year in terms of the comments that he would make at school board meetings. And he was intelligent, he was wise, and I just hope that I was able to fill his shoes. And in the first 6 months, I'm still finding my way. I do want to look at my notes to make sure that I do mention um, all of the important things. If you remember Wynn's slide about our values, one of the other reasons why you want to run, and I'm just going to quote from her chart, is that under the fair and equitable section, we are committed to serving every student in a fair and equitable manner. And it's really important, those words, every student, not just students of one particular race or ethnicity. You are there at the board to represent every single student. And I must also tell you that when students come to the podium at the board meetings, they are absolutely inspiring. And that is also one of the reasons why I decided to run for school board. Next slide, Wynn. Let's see, what to expect at the first meeting. That first meeting is where you will take an oath to represent all the students, where you will you swear that you will be ethical, and so that really is important that these things happen at the first board meeting. There'll be lots of voting at that first board meeting, and sometimes it feels like you've kind of entered a wind tunnel and things are happening at such a great speed. But a lot of voting is actually quite standard. There are a lot of things that just happen because they must happen at that first meeting. But most importantly, what you're going to do at that first meeting is vote for the president and vice president of the board for the coming year. And I do have to emphasize that it is just for 1 year. So before that first meeting, I was approached by several board members to have a cup of coffee. And I'm thinking, oh, that's really great. They're friendly. They just want to have a cup of coffee with me. Well, part of it is that they want to get to know me, and it was my chance to get to know them. But essentially, what they're doing is campaigning because they want your vote in order to become president or vice president. And perhaps just like in the United States, the president of the board has a lot of power, even though as a board member, as one single vote, you really cannot do a lot. You need to come together as a group, as a team. But the president actually does have sometimes more authority than any other of the board members. When we talk about chain of command, there's also a chain of command within the board. So not only within the school, for example, again, my colleagues mentioned if someone comes to you and says, my kid's teacher was mean, well, there is a chain of command. The parent should go back to the teacher. in terms of the board, you don't want all board members, let's say, going to the board attorney. So you do have to go through a chain of command, and that would mean going through the president of the board. So it's important to collaborate and be a team player. The other thing that will happen at that first meeting of the board is to make committee assignments. So hopefully you'll be asked what your preference is, what your skill set is, what you're interested in. But even if that doesn't happen and you're on a committee that perhaps didn't interest you, it's a good thing. And so you must ask yourself, well, why? Well, that's because you're going to learn a lot about the school district, about the school, how things operate. I'm on the policy committee. I'm on operations and transportation. And let me tell you, we go through our budget with a fine-tooth comb on the operations and transportation committee. It was not, my top 5 committees that I wanted to be on. But when you're on that committee, you learn an awful lot about how your district is run. You learn a lot about your business administrator. So think of leaving your comfort zone, and it's an opportunity to be on any of the committees. Again, just be prepared to leave your comfort zone. Finally, what to do after that first meeting of the board. Listen and then listen some more. Sometimes people say, well, for that first year, you should just listen and not say anything. I couldn't disagree more. Ask questions and then ask more questions. That's how you learn. And sometimes your questions are not welcome, but you know what? Don't stop asking questions. Use your experience, your skills, your knowledge to bring a different perspective to your committees. It really is quite helpful because you've got, at least in our district, 9 members on the board, and we all have our own opinions, which are formed in our lifetime. And all of them, are important. So just be respectful. As my colleague said, find your voice. So not only find your voice, but use it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. And we are ahead of our schedule. So I'm so happy that we have time for Q&A. So I want to first jump to the chat if we can to answer those questions, and then we'll do live questions. And you can do that by hovering below on the bar under emotions and then raise hands, because I'm not able to see on this screen, if that's okay. Or you can also drop in the chat and I'll call on you. So Karen has a question. Karen, do you want to go off mute and then ask your question live?
That's fine. Let's see, let me bring it up. No, I was curious, because I guess the past 2 years, I really got more interested in who was running for the school board, and I tried to find information about them. Now, maybe because I'm in a small district, I'm not sure. I'm in West Hampton, and I went on the website. I found the minutes for the board, but very little information on who was running. And I think the people I was trying to figure out what their positions were people who they were not currently on the board. And I ended up trying to find an email list. I emailed a couple of people and heard from one person. And at least that, that gave me some information, but I didn't see really any signs. So maybe because it's a rather small district, maybe it's very different than some of the ones that you're talking about with the signs and that kind of thing, because it just seemed to be very much a closed group. And so I was just curious.
So Karen, I'm so glad you asked that question. Let me just address it really quick. I want to point everyone in the chat to Georgianne, who wrote a really good comment. I used to serve on the board of the League of Women Voters, and our program there, the League's program there is vote411.org. So check that out as a resource. Pam, you wanted to jump in and say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, while candidates are running, the sitting board and the sitting administration, so the superintendent of schools, try very hard to be completely balanced, right? So they're not going to talk about what the candidates are talking about. They're not going to share any information. They don't want to give any sort of leg up to anyone or anything like that. So you won't find anything about candidates, or you shouldn't find anything about candidates on any kind of school website, meeting minutes, or anything of the like. It's not where you'd find any information about candidates. I also live in a small town. We're 4 miles square. We have a small town newspaper. They do a great job of putting out information about candidates. Candidates can write letters to the editor, but it's more of a push from the candidates. And so it can be difficult to, to find information. But
Yeah, I mean, and it's
women voters,
frustrating. It's frustrating for voters. So that's why I
of
was
course.
very,
Yeah.
very curious as to whether or not anything was being done. But that's helpful. I'll check that out. But I suspect because it is a small district, that maybe that's part of the issue.
So
Sure.
Karen, I just want to make sure that I add in from our perspective. We actually tried this last year and we will again this year. We have a website called boardofeducation.vote. And in each, under the candidates, we list by county those candidates who want to be listed if they align with our values. As you know, not all candidates align with our values. And they have to agree to this pledge, which is I support public schools and in protecting public education for all kids. So for example, if you're a candidate running and you believe in school vouchers or school choice, we're not going to recommend you, right? So supporting public school teachers too, and teacher pay. If you're against teacher pay or unions or whatever, this is probably not for you, right? And so on and so forth. So we just have 4 different components. If they agree, we actually list it. And this is going to be listed for this year, but under Burlington County, for example, you would scroll down here and then beside each school district, we would have candidates' names. So at minimum, you will have that available for you to do. The other thing that I wanted to show you, to show everybody, and we're not the only organization doing this, other organizations are doing too, but I also want to show you this one. We have another website for publiceducation.com, also under candidates. Let me click to that and show you. Right here, this is where you can donate directly to school board candidates who are aligned with us in our values. And we will also, right now we have a list of all the school districts that have elections this November. But once petitions are in, we will update this part and we will start listing candidates for people to also search. So, you know, along with the League of Women Voters, along with New Jersey Public Education Coalition and other organizations, we're all kind of working together to make sure that we get school board candidates out, who they are, what they stand for, in, you know, as many districts as we can. So I hope that answers it. Sandra, did you want to jump in?
Yes, at least in Hunterdon County, we had a panel discussion that was actually sponsored by the school. So the candidates, theoretically all 6 candidates when I was running should have shown up. At least 3 of us did. So that's one way of hearing what a candidate stands for and what their values are. The League of Women Voters has their survey. There's so many surveys that come out to board members. And at least again in Hunterdon County, our county clerk, Mary Melfi, encourages the candidates to complete questionnaires so that they're actually, I don't know if they were online, but I remember completing them, so that there are ways to find out information about candidates. And also, Karen, if you do see signs or pamphlets or mailers, read them really carefully. There are keywords in there. I was naive. When you fill out your petition, you're supposed to add 3 words to your name. And I'm thinking, well, why do you want 3 words next to my name? That actually goes on the ballot. And I was thinking, well, gee, it's about schools, it's about education, and it's about students. Isn't that simple? So again, just read carefully, ask your friends. I don't know if you have teachers who are friends, but talk to them. And, before this last year, I would call my teacher friend the night before I had to go vote and say, who should I vote for? But you're right, sometimes it's difficult to get information.
So I want to add one more thing before we go to Ruth for her question. So Ruth, you're going to be up next. One more thing I want to add, that is, if there are candidates that's running for your vote in your school district, ask them directly. What do you stand for? Why are you running? Where's your website? Where's your candidate social media page if you don't have a website? Within Board Boost, we tell all of our candidates they have to have either a website or a free social media public candidate page. We want, even if they're running unopposed, I say you owe every voter the responsibility of that vote. So tell them who you are, why you're running, and why they should vote for you, even if you're running unopposed. And I think that we as voters, and speaking as a voter, we should demand that of people running for elected office, right? And I think we can start turning that conversation around. Ruth, go ahead, unmute and ask your question.
Sure. I'm an educator in another school district, not where I live. So I just wanted to know if there are any like conflicts of interest I need to watch out for. Like I was thinking specifically like if there are negotiations going on, do I need to recuse myself? Those sort of issues, because I don't want to put the board at a disadvantage by not having a vote when they need one.
I mean, you can't, if you're a member of the NJEA, you cannot negotiate a labor contract on behalf of the district with a bargaining unit. You can negotiate other contracts, but you can't negotiate with your own union. And there are occasions you'll be guided by your board attorney on whether or not you can approve the contract once it is negotiated, but you should always be led by your board attorney.
Thank you.
We have a teacher on our board right now, and he just recuses himself as necessary. And I would say in the 6 months that I've been there, he's maybe had to do it 3 times. And he just walks out of the meeting for 10 minutes and then he walks back in.
So I just want to clarify for people listening live and those listening on recording, that's if you're an educator and a teacher in one school district that's different than the one you live in. So if you're running to serve for the school board, it would be for a different school board than the one you're employed at. And there is, again, you have to recuse yourself if you're an NJEA member and other union things, but there's really, other than that, there's really very few conflicts of interest, I would say. Earlier, Saima had her hand up. Saima, are you still here with us? And would you like to ask your question?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Yes, I have a question. So one of the speakers mentioned that to have a presence in social media is probably not a very good thing for the candidate. So I just wanted to piggyback on that and ask, in case if somebody has a presence on social media, because this person probably had, the founder member for many organizations and stuff like that, then you can go online and find everything about this person. Is this a bad thing? Because not that that person has done anything, anything bad. It's just that that person has quite a presence. So what do you do about that?
I probably made the comment, and I think if there's nothing controversial in your social media presence, it's absolutely fine. But just know that because you do have a social media presence, that your opponent or your opponent's supporters are going to read it very carefully and, look for things that they can, pick apart.
Rebecca,
Yeah, I would personally recommend that you make all of like your Facebook page, your Instagram private. The stuff that's out there public, there's not a whole lot you can do about that.
Okay.
The second time I ran, somebody tried to make me out to be sort of an extremist in one direction. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. You just, it is what it is. People will know where the truth lies, but I would be just cautious about what you put out there.
Yeah,
All right, thank you so much.
I say, as a small business owner, my entire marketing and advertising platform is Facebook and Instagram. So I'm on social media a lot. But I locked down my personal site. I made everything private, just so it's just for my friends. Whereas before everything was very public because I was trying to promote my business. So I did just make everything private so that, when your name and your face is out on a sign all over town, people are looking for you. And I just wanted to kind of protect my kids from that and not expose my entire family because I decided to do this.
Exactly. Thank you.
I also want to add just really quick on this other viewpoint. I agree with my panelists on that. However, I have seen opponents be very loud and open on where they stand on a variety of issues, and be very proud of their endorsements from certain organizations and even from sitting elected legislators. So they have made the decision in those circumstances to be out and proud and loud about it. So that is and they attract their voters that way, right? So I'm talking particularly in Hunterdon County, in Warren County, in Sussex County, a little bit in Bergen County. So, it's just, there's two ways to look at that and how you want to handle that. Are there any other questions? I just want to make sure that people see Georgianne's note about what's available for the League of Women Voters and vote411.org. I love that website. So take a look at that. If you have questions, please go ahead and drop in the chat or raise your hand. I do have a couple of questions for the panelists since we have 6 minutes left. For each of you, if you can quickly, let's go round robin. Let me call on Pam first. Why would you recommend people to run for the Board of Education? I mean, you had 30 years in corporate. Why was your reasoning for running for the Board of Ed?
I mean, I ran in 2017, and at that point, my feeling was I was not going to sit back and do not be involved anymore. And so I ran really feeling like I wanted to make a difference and I could do something that was really meaningful. And it was really meaningful. I mean, when mentioned the $80 million referendum we passed on December 12th, my term ended on December 31st. Our schools were in such bad shape. Our high school students do science experiments in the courtyard because we don't have proper ventilation. That's how bad our schools were. In Madison, New Jersey, I mean, one of the wealthiest communities in the state. And we worked tirelessly to get that referendum passed, and it passed by a lot, thanks to community members who really got behind it and just perseverance. And, our kids are going to go on and have great facilities moving forward. And so it just, there are things that you do as a board member that really can make a huge difference. And so as tough as it can be, I highly recommend it.
And Sandra, why would you recommend people to run? I mean, you're in a very contentious area of Hunterdon County. You're definitely in more than the figuratively, you're also literally a minority on the board in your community as well. So why would you recommend for people to run for the Board of Ed, knowing how contentious it could be?
Well, I go back to being a taxpayer and paying attention to what's going on in my town, in my school district. And, my kids now are 20 and 25, so in college and in graduate school. And I just realized how important it is to have an excellent, set of schools. And what you want to do is maintain that excellence. And it bothered me when I was attending, board meetings for almost 2 years to hear people say that that there were issues with lack of transparency, that parents would say they're coming after the board, and I said, oh my gosh, these are volunteers working hard, whether you agree or not with their values. These are volunteers sitting up there taking these comments from the public. And so perhaps like Pam, I was very active politically in terms of national elections. And I said, well, maybe it is time also to become involved at the local level. But again, I guess I was surprised at how, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? How uncivil it could all be. But I don't regret it because the board is the voice of the students. The students have no voice. The teachers have their union. The nurses belong to, at least in our district, the same union. We've got administrators who have their group, and it's the students who need a voice. So I represent all the students. And I must tell you, even in the first 6 months, it has been incredibly rewarding. You see how hard the teachers work, but it pays off when you see the students come to the presentations and, they're a little bit nervous, but they are just absolutely fantastic. And so I am very glad that I've done this. I am surprised at the time commitment, but so far it's been worth it.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And Rebecca, do you have a quick, we're running low on time. We have one question I want to answer, but go ahead, Rebecca. Why would you
I
recommend
think
people?
the reason I ran, I said I didn't have a personal agenda, except I didn't want to allow anyone else's personal agenda to come into our schools. So that's why I ran 100%, to just make sure to keep the status quo, because someone has to.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. Ryan has a question in the chat. Are there board boost resources and classes easily accessible if we wanted to get a better idea of the campaign process prior to committing to running? No, there's not. We don't give out the goods because we are not about to train the opponents. So you have to come on and join our program. We vet everyone and we limit the number of people that we allow on, because what we offer is so valuable. And I mean, free headshots, complete campaign design, everything. And for that, we only ask you to agree to a terms and conditions agreement, how we operate. And then the second thing is just a personal $100 donation to our charity. That's it. Everything else we vet. We run this program based on donations of our donors. So we're grateful for that. Ryan's other question was, is there a way to find out who else is running in the district? What if I would say only run someone I did not agree with, would be otherwise unopposed, and not run if someone else I did agree with was already running? So here's the thing. In a presidential election year, you cannot run in as a write-in. You will not find out who else is running until after the petition deadline is closed and that list is public. But what I would say is, if you're on the fence for that exact reason, Ryan, submit your petition. And then afterwards, if you see that there are people you do agree with and you want to support them in campaigning and helping them win, you can withdraw your petition. You have time for that. But if you miss the petition, then you're running as a write-in. And on this presidential years, with the turnout numbers that we expect, there is no way you can win otherwise. So I would advocate for everyone to go ahead, if you're on the fence, submit your petition, and then let's look to see who else is running and see where it is afterwards. Rebecca, go ahead. We are very close out of time. Do you want to have one more comment?
Just one quick comment about that.
Yeah.
Your position on the ballot is everything. So if you are running and someone else that you agree with is running and you don't want to run against each other, I would say wait until you find out where you show up on the ballot, and whoever can get the closer to the first position, run, because that's 90% of it. That position on the ballot is so important.
So these are some of the things that we teach you in Board Boost. I'm going to follow up with everyone who registered with this slide set also the link to this recording. It takes a while for the video to process and for me to upload it on our public website and on YouTube. So you should expect to see that within 48 hours. But I want to thank our speakers for all the time they spent to get this presentation ready for you all. I am so appreciative of the wisdom that they imparted, all the tips. So I also want to thank our attendees for tuning in and for those watching this on recording. We hope to see you at the next one. There is one, and you saw it on a previous slide, about ELEC and finances, how to set up a bank, getting an EIN, which actually, Wilbur, you will need to get an EIN. That was a question that Wilbur submitted earlier. But once you're a board booth member, we teach you all of that. But again, those are kind of the goods that we don't want to give out to the opposition. I hope you guys understand. But I hope that this sets your expectations about the good things. And if you guys heard, it was repeatedly, it was worth my time. I'm glad I did it, even though I had decades in corporate as a business owner, as a lauded educator and HR professional, etc. They loved this work. And you know what they were paid for? Zero money. And everyone was unhappy with them at some point in time, but they still loved it. So I hope you guys will consider running for the school board and serving your community. And that is, again, school boards, and Sandra said it. Public schools are the heart of every community. Make your community strong, support your local public schools. So thank you so much, and have a good night, everybody. Bye.